Welcome back, Stalkers. Today we have some good news because the patch 1.2 for Stalker 2 is finally out. It includes over 1700 fixes and improvements to all aspects of the game, because after New Year's GSC was kinda silent working on this update, and this is going to be the second major update because the first one happened in 2024 and introduced a lot of fixes to life and everything else, including like story segments which were blocked or not working properly and so on. But today we have a new patch and we're gonna be going through all of the major changes. Keep in mind there is a lot to go through here, so I will be going through ones which I have extensively tested since yesterday. First things first, when it comes to AI, they fixed a bug with life NPCs who were unable to properly approach down the stalkers. Now they can pick up the best loot and weapons from them and switch to more powerful weapons, and this is something I've actually experienced in the game, which absolutely makes sense because if you're an NPC in the zone, especially a stalker who is surviving regardless of your faction, if you down an enemy you're gonna be looting the stuff which they have. Now so far I think they were looting a bit, because even prior to this patch I've seen that some stalkers were approaching corpses, but that was happening incredibly rare and it wasn't something you could see all the time, and it was definitely bugged. But now, after pretty much every encounter when there are enemies, or well, NPCs still standing, they're gonna be actually going towards those NPCs. Now the second big thing which they fixed was the NPC shooting accuracy. So they reconfigured the bullet dispersion accuracy for all distances for all weapons, and they also added randomization of accurate shots in bullet sprays. Keep in mind this is only regarding the actual NPCs, not you. And they reduced the wall penetration from certain NPCs' weapon bullets. This was the case before, where regardless of where you were hiding, enemy AI was pretty much pinpointing on your body, so they just started shooting at you in a sense like they had aimbot. And this was incredibly difficult in case you were fighting those enemies, because most of the time their shots are not really going to make sense, but they're actually just rather gonna be going straight for you, and it's not going to be a really fair fight. Now after engaging in some fights in the game after patch 1.2, I definitely saw a difference. Now there was a case one time though where enemies still fired at me through like a very small opening, and I just couldn't figure out how he was able to do that, but it's much less and less than it was prior to this update. So now those fights I think are going to flow a bit better, because at least for me they did. They also improved stealth, because this was a major problem in the game where most of the time stealth wasn't really working and you were seen by the enemies like fairly easily and around things which kinda didn't make sense to happen. Now they fixed an issue where after a melee attack the NPC could end up behind the player. This was also the problem which I had when I actually tried to melee attack an enemy, because I wanted to see like how stealth worked before. So at that time, I mean, it's better, it's definitely improving on that end, where I actually saw like I have more time to just go around certain enemies or try to do some stealth before they see me. Before that it was almost instant, but now it is a bit better. I can definitely vouch for that one. Now they also improved the mutant behavior in combat, so they fixed an issue where AI wouldn't avoid obstacles and get stuck during scripted combat. This was the case in a few missions where basically mutants were just standing in one place, and I was wondering what's exactly happening here, because those mutants were supposed to run towards Skiff and towards the player and another NPC, which I'm not going to spoil, but they just didn't, because there was a certain car in front of them and they just couldn't get around it. Now sadly there's no way for me to repeat that mission, but at least so far most of the mutants I fought like after patch 1.2 did not really have these issues. And of course they fixed an issue where jumping mutants could be stuck in air in certain conditions. To be honest, I haven't seen this problem myself. Now speaking of mutants and other changes, there is a lot here, but I'm gonna be going through like the most important ones. So they fixed that controller ability does not work through great doors, so that's going to be a bit more problematic if you start fighting one. They fixed that mutants were not able to attack in certain positions. One of those cases was if you run really fast around them, they kinda got stuck in one place. I can definitely vouch that's not the case anymore. Now, they fixed an issue where Chimera could jump through objects. This is good. This was definitely causing a lot of issues for people who fought them. And they fixed an issue where the Chimera did not use the jump attack. Keep in mind, this is actually now going to make them even more deadly because, well, they basically have another attack for your, well, another ability. Now, there is also another fix which I think a lot of people were using, and that's that they fixed an issue where mutants with ability to jump were running around the player on elevated, unreachable surface. This was usually the case with bloodsuckers and how, like, I avoided them, but to be honest, there are still places where I could go and they were still running around me, but it's much lesser than before, so my tactic of actually surviving those attacks is not going to be panning out, so just keep that in mind. If you're going through the zone and if you see somewhere where you can jump and kind of hide yourself, that's going to be tricky from now on. Now, they also added the roar ability for controllers, so keep that in mind, and they fixed an issue where alive NPCs did not heal friendly wounded NPCs. This was the case multiple times where the fight ends and the downed NPC pretty much stays there until the end, while other like NPCs which were with them, they just kind of continue on their way. This is something that it's not really immersive in that sense. I'm really glad that this was actually a feature in the game, but it just wasn't working properly. Now, this is also important. They fixed an issue that could cause alive NPCs to have access to quest locations. This was actually causing some issues for people, so this is a huge plus. Now, they also fixed an issue where alive militaries could spawn endlessly near Rookie Village, so that's not going to be the case anymore, but I think that was okay for me because you always had some encounters and some engagement, you know, to fight against some people as you're leaving Rookie Village, so I mean, that's okay, but I would maybe keep it. Now, when it comes to balancing, there are some changes which you might want to know. So one of the biggest things is that they fixed an issue when a grenade could deal damage to Boorer when the shield was active, so just keep that in mind. And they also increased the frequency of jump attacks for blind dog mutants. It wasn't happening before, like they just kinda nibbled on you, but now they're gonna be jumping a lot more, which I also noticed in my testing. They also rebalanced pistols and silencer attachments, and they decreased the spawn rate for NPCs in exoskeletons, so you're gonna be seeing less and less of them in the zone, which also kind of makes sense because, well, you don't have that many people in exoskeletons anyway, especially when it starts happening early in the game. Now, they also reconfigured the armor distribution for NPCs to kind of make more sense for the game, where they increased the chance of spawning low and mid-tier armor with the reduced chance of spawning the top-tier armor, so that's also something to keep in mind. Also, when it comes to radiation, they increase the radiation damage based on the accumulated rad points, so this means the more radiation you have, the more HP you're gonna be, you know, losing. That's something which I noticed wasn't happening all that much because radiation in previous Stalker games was a lot more dangerous. So now it seems they want to bring that back with this update to kind of make you more wary if you're gonna be going into places which have high radiation, and at the same time kind of make you spend all of those anti-radiation drugs, which most of us have been hoarding anyway because, to be honest, I wasn't using them all that much. Now, they also added the ability to trade with additional NPCs at hubs, which is kind of good, makes sense, and also they made some economy tweaks for a job for the barkeeper repeatable missions on veteran difficulty. Now, when it comes to optimization and crashes, over the past, I don't know, maybe 10 hours as I've been testing this patch since yesterday, I haven't had one single crash. Now, to be honest, at the same time, one of the updates for the game, which was prior to patch 1.1, was causing a lot of crashes for me, but after patch 1.1 it kind of stabilized a bit. Now, to be honest, with patch 1.2 I'm still not seeing those issues when it comes to crashes, so far I've had a very smooth experience, but that's also me personally. You can let me know down below in the comments if patch 1.2 is causing more crashes for you, but it technically shouldn't, as they fixed a few things here. So they fixed the performance drop when closing PDA or pause menu, which is something I noticed as well. They slightly improved performance by disabling navigation mesh rebuild properties for multiple objects. To be honest, when it comes to frame rate, I haven't seen really a huge difference. Obviously, things are a little bit more smoother now and they load better, but it wasn't really a huge thing. But it is said here that it slightly improves performance, nothing crazy, so maybe 1 to 2 frames. They also fixed the memory leak related to item manipulation, so that's interesting, and they fixed over 100 exception access violation crashes and other errors, including other minor memory leaks, which is mostly the cause of like why the game was crashing for a lot of people. They also fixed input lag when enabling VSync with Fidelity FX frame interpolation enabled, and they also added the frame rate lock during pause menu, main menu and loading screens. This is good because if you add a lock to it, it means it's going to draw more resources, so if you want to take a pause or something, your PC is going to be able to take a breather, or basically everywhere else or any other platform you're running this game on, the hardware is gonna be now under less stress if these things are happening, you know, if you have a lock during some of these things like main menu and stuff. Now, when it comes to under the hood changes, as they call them, player's flashlight now casts shadows on objects, so that's cool. I mean, it wasn't happening before, so you can see it in the gameplay. They fixed an issue where relationships with NPCs did not change properly, so now they will, which ultimately means if you do some bad things at the same time, those relationships are gonna be getting worse and worse, and you're gonna be a lot more visible now. Now, this is important. They fixed an issue where save backups could be missing after losing game save, so that's incredibly important because for many people, sadly, when this game came out, they had issues where basically their save games were completely bricked, especially when it comes to certain main story missions. Now, they fixed NPC animation glitches while smoking. That's cool. Now, they also fixed an issue where in-game saves became corrupted after deleting local saves and failed cloud syncs. Now, I tried this again, to be honest, like after they said this was fixed, and I did not have any issues with this, so I can vouch for myself that it's not causing corruptions anymore. Now, when it comes to main storyline missions and side quests and activities, they have fixed a lot, and by a lot I mean there is a huge list of things here which I wanted to go through, but then I realized that there is a lot of spoilers here for people who haven't really played the game fully or they haven't reached a certain point in the story. But one of the things I can definitely vouch for and something I can see which was fixed was the second thing here, and they said it's fixed a bug that caused the reputation with Sultan Bandits or Shevchenko Stalkers not to increase after completing the 3 captains missions. This is important. And most of the other stuff is going to be just tweaking out stuff so that you don't get pretty much locked out of your game because certain doors weren't open, and streamlining the experience of those missions by removing some things or adding some things later on, like for example some mutants. So there is a lot here which they fixed, and I'm glad because some of those story missions were definitely causing a lot of issues. Of course, you can go through these changes yourself, but keep in mind, again, there is a lot of spoilers here, so just watch out. Now, going back to non-spoiler things, we're going to be talking about interactable objects and zone experience, which they have polished in the patch 1.2. So level design improvements for interactive doors at Wild Territory and Rostock. This is pretty good, some tweaks here and there so it opens properly. Now, they also added the missing icon of damaged state for weapons looted from NPCs. They fixed an issue where artifacts were able to spawn again after player's rank is updated, so just keep in mind it's not gonna be happening again. Now, they rebalanced loot for stash near the hydrodynamics lab, and they fixed an issue with some artifacts model being overexposed. Now, when it comes to player gear and player state, they fixed another funny glitch which was happening, and they fixed the availability to unlock locked doors with grenades. Yes, that was actually a thing you can do in Stalker 2. Now, they also fixed the consumption of grenades when switching to the weapon immediately after throw, so that's something which was happening because you were able to glitch it basically so you don't actually lose a grenade, or at least that's what I was doing a few times in the game. They also added the parkour animation from crouch state. They fixed receiving of the damage from Razor Anomaly when you are already out, so that was happening a few times. Now, another issue which was fixed and was kinda going on my nerves was that when auto lean and weapons moves up were actually triggered by small trees and bushes. So when you were doing a firefight and you were trying to find a good opening behind some cover, there has been many times where Skiff just basically like raised the rifle in a wrong way and you were not able to like have full control of your weapon in that case, which was again causing issues. Now they also fixed the ability to skip the reload animation, so yeah, that's not gonna be the case, and they added the cancel for reload animation of weapons with under barrel launcher attachments. Now I would also say that being able to reload when you're sprinting would be a very nice addition to the game. Now they probably didn't leave it there, maybe because that's the game formula that they want, but to be honest, being able to like reload at least slower if I'm sprinting, or at least having that continuous reload where the game is gonna be remembering if I took out my mag, you know, or not, that would be cool, because right now it pretty much like cancels out animation. It looks kind of goofy at the same time. If the magazine is already out, you start running, you try to reload again, and then magically another magazine which is empty appears in the rifle. When it comes to player guidance and game settings, they have added a lot of fixes, so like just small things like map zoom from gamepad, the presence of a dimming effect in the inventory and item selector, so just making things look a bit better than they were before, so I'm always for that. And also something that people were talking about in my previous patch video was that they were not able to drag and drop items into loot or stash window with the gamepad sometimes, and this is actually fixed now. Now of course I haven't really tried to replicate this bug with a controller, so let me know down below in the comments if you're still experiencing this. Now of course one of the things you're gonna be also seeing in the game are improvements to how light and just collision everywhere looks, because they have been working a lot on that. Now of course there are some things which they fixed, like for example a player not being able to leave like X17 lab, which is horror by itself, but everything else is pretty much getting those little updates and how would I say, some makeup here and there to make things look a bit better and to kind of make them sync with the light of the game, because you have probably noticed that some of the objects on the ground might look overexposed or underexposed compared to the light which is actually present in that scene or during that time of the day. Now keep in mind, when it comes to again audio, cutscenes and voiceover, they have been improved with almost 100 fixes, each aimed to enhance your game experience. Of course, some of the stuff which was named, a lot of stuff wasn't, so keep in mind I'm going through some of the biggest stuff here. Like there are a lot of things which they haven't even named in this post, which we don't know exactly what was fixed, because there are so many things, you know, happening in this patch. But some of the stuff I was able to replicate, like some of the bugs, especially when it comes to main missions, seem to be fixed now, but everything else is pretty much, you know, case by case scenario, so it's tough to like say, okay, this is the bug which I'm having, maybe you're not having that bug, maybe someone else is having a different bug, so it's really difficult to test those things out that easily. Now when it comes to my opinion on the patch itself, I think this is really good that GSE is improving the game more and more, especially because a lot of the core features which are kind of a staple for a Stalker experience and the immersion which we had in the previous Stalker games really wasn't working well, especially when it comes to A-Life. But it seems to me slowly but surely with each new patch that we see, things are getting better and better. Now, as I said with patch 1.1, patch 1.2 is also going to be one of those patches where you are going to see changes and improvements happening in front of you, because most of the time when you have a patch, maybe a smaller one, a lot of that stuff is just being fixed under the hood, and it's not something you're going to see it right away, but rather as you continue playing. But I think this one definitely does that well, where my experience, obviously with all of the improvements they added in patch 1.1, felt a lot better, they felt a lot more natural. But as it is, there is of course improvements and just things they could add a lot more into the future, and as they said, they're pretty much going to continue to support the game further, which is pretty good, and I think it's going to make a lot more people go back to the game, try it out again. Because I also know some people who are waiting for this game to be patched even more before they get into it, but I've been following this game since day one. Basically, I saw it kind of state on release, and even though it was a pretty good experience, in the zone, you could see that some of those things were definitely not there, but they're getting fixed now and they're getting improved. So you can tell me down below in the comments if patch 1.2 helped you in your playthrough, or maybe it caused more issues. You can of course write it down below and let me know which platform you are playing on. And of course at the end they said that if you do see an anomaly that's not supposed to be in the game, you can report it to the tech support hub, which I'm going to obviously leave a link down below alongside the full patch notes and everything if you want to read the further list on your own. So Stalkers, thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to smash that like and subscribe button for more, and join our community on Discord and Twitter. Huge thanks to my current Patreon supporters, and as always, get out of here, Stalker.